What did they do with the, oh. Hey, Drew, I did see you for a second there on camera.
Yeah. Something is some kind of a conflict somewhere because my camera light is on. I just don't know what's going on with it.
Hey, Jeff. He looks like he's. Hey, Jeff.
I just saw myself for a brief second. Right as I shut down another app.
So that little logo with the little wheel there that Jeff has, that's actually
that
OBS.
OBS Studio, yeah, I
Yeah.
recognize that. I recognize that logo. Yep, I use that for desktop recording sometimes.
Steve, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, Jeff, we have no video on you.
Yeah, I don't have the camera on. I get a little better performance if I don't. Do you want my camera on? Or? I'm happy to be incognito.
We'd love to see your face there, Mr. Jeff.
Hasn't gotten any younger looking. I'll go
That's all right. We're all getting older.
Yeah. I've been, there was a few months that the meeting wasn't happening and I didn't realize it started up. I was talking to Adam and he said, well, where have you been? I says, well, been where? He says, for the BNUG. I says, I didn't know the meetings were still happening. I don't know how I fell off the invitation list, but.
Well, if you always have questions, you can always go to the BNUG website. Hey, Drew, we see we see you on camera for a second.
Yep, briefly, and then it went away. Every time I close an app, as I close the app, my face appears on the camera briefly, and then it disappears again.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
You know you're running OBS camera?
Maybe, okay, that's one of the drivers I guess I'm running.
Yeah, you might want to try switch to a different
If
camera.
If he doesn't have his real camera plugged in, that's what he'll probably get as a camera default.
Yeah, you're right, I don't have the real camera plugged into this computer.
I don't see. I wonder what could be interfering in the camera.
Yeah, really. That's got to be homemade.
Choose background video settings.
There's nothing like homemade lasagna.
I like all food made in other people's homes.
Jeff, you're getting there.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can.
We'll start in about just about 5 minutes. Steve, I think we need to do something. I'm not sure what we're gonna do.
Well, if we did, then the people on the Zoom call won't be able.
There's something we need to do. I don't know what it is. Because we shouldn't be getting an echo like that.
Yeah, but if the way
I'm only hearing an echo when you talk, Adam.
Let me try turning this on. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Maybe we should move the speakers further away from the laptop.
Yeah, try that, Steve. Try moving the speakers away from that. No, like really away. Like, yeah, the other side of the table, Steve. Steve, the other side, move them, the speakers way away from your machine, see if that helps. We want to get them away from your microphone. Actually, see, I know what to do. Mute you, Steve. Mute your speaker. Are you muted? Testing 1, 2, 3. Wait, no, we're still getting an echo. Why are we getting? We're computer people. Why are we getting an echo?
Oh, because the speakers are plugged into that computer, which is getting your mic through Zoom. Are you muted on there? Maybe if you mute, Steve unmutes. Or we plug the speakers into your computer.
So you're both physically at the facility running Zoom? Now you're all muted.
Test 1, 2, 1, 2.
So Drew, can you hear Steve?
I can hear Steve now. He was just muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You hear me okay?
In a distance, like you're standing far away from the microphone.
Might work better.
Let me unmute. And Steve, why don't you mute? Testing 1, 2, 3.
Well, because the input and the output have to be on the same computer. So we can put the speakers on your computer. Speakers have to be on whichever computer's unmuted.
Yeah.
I see. We need a speaker computer. Okay, I understand what we need to do.
See, what you
So,
can do,
Steve, let's bring the speakers over here and plug them into this computer. And this will be the place people go to when it's time to speak. Yeah. So Steve, move the speakers over here, please.
okay.
And that makes sense because it's a podium. People can be at the podium.
This is a perfect example of the use of that banana software that I had showed you guys, where you can have a separate microphone and you can software mute it.
We can't hear you yet. Hold on. Save those brilliant ideas.
Stand by.
Great.
Oh, shit.
Good. And where's the green plug?
Done.
No, where's the
Oh,
green,
green
the
plug.
green plug? Yeah.
Right here.
Thank you kindly.
Doing that because you're touching the tip.
I wasn't there, actually. I wasn't touching it. It's just. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, testing. And then Steve, turn off your speaker on your computer. Just mute, just turn it off.
You're okay right now.
Yeah, we fixed that. I think what we're gonna do is we have a podium here. And so now people can come to the podium and speak when it's time to speak, or they can speak on Zoom.
That would make them wanna have your camera off. So then the people on the Zoom meeting can see whoever's.
Yeah, my camera's on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in two different places. I'm transportable. Fiordalisa. Hola.
I need more of them. How many IT people does it take to get it now? Oh, yeah, I can go.
So
Hey, if you, guys, you members out there in, Zoom land, we're flying, the IT jokes are flying here at the, Mass Bay.
So Steve, Steve, is your mic on?
Yeah. No, my mic is muted.
Yeah, no, you're not. Mute yourself on Zoom.
he is muted.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
He looks muted.
Go ahead and say something.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that's better.
Coming to your computer.
No, it's coming through yours.
It's
Your speaker's on. Turn off your speaker, Steve.
Your volume.
Yeah. This would be a good case scenario before the meeting starts. If you had two separate microphones, you have two computers that are both.
Hold on
connected.
just a sec. Hold on a second. I just want to do a basic test. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me okay, Drew?
Yes.
Okay. So folks, for people who are in 3 dimensions here, welcome. Welcome to BNUG. When you want to speak, we'll take a moment and you can come up to the podium and speak. I think that's where we're going to do this. And we'll experiment. And then Drew, we can talk more about other microphone arrangements, but that's our arrangement for tonight. And we can
Right.
talk more about it. So we're going to get started in just a moment. We're being joined by illustrious people. Hello, Salom. So just a moment, each person can do a brief introduction. So I'll call on people. We'll do a brief introduction. The people here, when it's time, come on up. So I'll point to you and we'll come on up. Maybe what I'll do is I'll say who the next person is. So you can be on deck and try to make that work. Okay. Salom, do you want to turn on your camera? Salom is one of my international friends. He's from Ghana. Fiordalisa is another international friend. Welcome, Fiordalisa.
Hello.
Why don't we start with the Zoom people? Drew, could you introduce yourself and just say just a brief word about yourself?
Sure. Drew King, been a BNUG member for many generations of years. Back when it was the Novell Network Users Group, before it was the Boston Network User Group. Currently living in Florida, doing computer consulting. Right now, I've been spending a lot of time working on Chrome OS and turning it into more of a functional computer. And I've been finding that I can work in it pretty much every day now, with a few exceptions here and there. That's about it.
Thank you, Drew. Welcome. Jeff, could you introduce yourself briefly? Jeff, are you there? Oh, there.
I'm here. Hey, guys, like Drew, I'm a longtime member. Been away for a little bit, but now I'm back virtually. I'm down in southeastern Mass. My company's Whaling City Software. Been in business a little over 40 years. Started out programming and then later on got into, large scale networks. Currently, we do Nutanix for large hyperconverged systems, Windows Server networks for medium, and My small customers do a lot with Synology NAS. And that's what we're doing right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve, you tell me about it. Your Lisa, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you. So my name is Lisa, and I currently live in Massachusetts. I have a general interest in computers. My interest is psychology, but I understand how AI, computers, and psychology will converge in the very near future. So yes, a general knowledge as at this point.
Thank you very much. And who else do we have online? We've got Tom St. Cyr.
Hey.
Tom, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, let me just. Yeah, Tom St. Cyr, live in West Roxbury. I've been part of this group now for 4 or 5 years. Enjoy every minute of it. I sell and install and service phone systems and camera systems for a living. Looking forward to tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Salome, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we see your phone. I'm gonna rename your phone so people know whose phone that is, if I can.
Okay.
It's
I
gonna
have
take.
to dial in.
Yeah, I understand. Hold on just a sec. Let me do that. Renaming there. Rename. This is Salome Badahu, tea engineer extraordinaire. And one of my international friends, Salome, is from Ghana. Welcome, Salome.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Great to have you. Arthur, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, Adam. Arthur Priver, President of Mentor Systems. We provide computer support for small businesses and home offices, and have been a member for eternity here at BNUG. What's it, 35 to 40 years, something like that.
Thank you, Arthur. And Martin?
Oh, hey, everybody. Martin Kadansky, Kadansky Consulting. I've been running my own business for about 25 years now, helping people one-on-one with their computers. I tend to describe myself as a computer driving instructor. I refer out repairs and emergencies to folks like Adam, but I just love helping people with their Macs or PCs, understand how to use them better, and that sort of thing. I also write a free monthly email newsletter I call Martin's Practical Computer Advice, where I write about the stuff that everybody, including me, struggles with. So always happy to be here.
Thank you, Martin. Steve, could you come up and introduce yourself? No, come on. Yeah, we'll get there.
I need to fix this. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Provost. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Provost, currently serving as the website person in charge of the BNUG website, as well as the Zoom. I also build websites and manage 2 nonprofit organizations here in the Boston area. And longtime member of BNUG.
Thank you, Steve. Did Perry join us? He came and went, I think. He'll be back. Jake.
Hi, I'm Jay Hoffman. I'm a math tutor and have a modest skill or competence in computer issues, which I developed through Adam's groups, and I guess that's it for me.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lane Coelho. I am a student here at Mass Bay Community College for Information Systems Technology Management, and I've been an intern with Adam at Computer Care and Learning for about 6 months now. Yeah. Thank you. And this is my second BNUG meeting.
Thank you. Perry's just joined us. Hello, Perry. Could you just
Hello.
say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Perry Carrison. I'm a client of Adam's and a friend of his, and he invited me because I went to China in May, June of last year. I think that's right.
That's right. And also, we like your company.
Oh, thank you.
Stan?
We are. Where am I? There we go. Stan Coper. I'm not a computer professional. But I am my home IT guy. So my biggest problem at the moment is not getting one of my Windows 10 computers to recognize the network or get on the network. So anybody has any thoughts, you can put something up on BNUG. We'll see what I can do.
Okay. Thank you, Stan.
Adam, introduce yourself, please.
You don't need to. You don't need to. Okay. So it's my, don't do it and I forget, then you can. Right? No, but I haven't forgotten. It was my turn.
It's your turn. Oh.
It's annoying.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There.
All right then. Hello, everyone. My name's Adam. I help run BNUG, and I'm very grateful to be keeping this torch going. That's been going on for many, many years, 35 years. And I think it's really important that people meet to talk about computer issues, which is why the subject tonight is about social control in China and the United States. But because this is a computer group, we're also really committed to computer education. Oh, Sharif, do you want to come and introduce yourself?
Hello, good evening. My name is Sharif Sheikh. I live in Concord. I'm a retired IT professional. Started IT career back in 1977 and retired. Now I'm very active with these senior groups, local senior group, and I live in Concord. So the senior groups I'm involved with is Bedford, Burlington, Lexington, and Concord, of course. And I'm part of the Boston Network user group for the last 5 years. Thanks to know you.
Thank you, Sharif. Because we're a computer group and we're a computer education group, I'd like to begin each meeting with some computer education. So I've become really interested in how a computer works. Now, that statement, how a computer works, can be thought about on many, many different levels. You can talk about how Windows works. You could talk about how Word works. You could talk about how AI works. You could talk about what happens when a patient goes to see an AI machine and gets therapy from it. All of those things are computers working. But what I want to talk about is the beginning of the story, which is how the original computers were designed. And rather like Latin is woven into the English language, the way computers were originally designed is woven into the way every single thing that happens with computers happens. And I find that if you can understand that, you're really on a good road. So what we've been sharing in this meeting is a really wonderful book, which I'm going to open up for us, if you'll bear with me as I get the right computer in the right place. It just takes me a minute to get my act together here. So this book is a book about computer engineering. It was written a long time ago, but the basics have not changed. The basics are the same. And so if you can understand this book and the engineering that goes into the computers that this person talks about, you're well on the road to understanding how computers work in general. So just bear with me while I find this book. This book is by a professor named Malvino, And one of the many things I like about him is he's very, very thorough and very careful and is really determined to help people understand how computers work. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. I don't know if I did it right. I think I did. There we go. And I'm going to open up this PDF. PDF stands for Portable Document Format, and it was invented by Adobe a long time ago to let you look at books and other printed material without having to worry about the fonts. So basically a PDF is a photograph of a book, and this is a photograph of a book. I want to shout out to the Internet Archive for making this book available. Since the Internet Archive has been having copyright issues, I want to let everyone know I do own this book and have a right to share it in a teaching environment, which is what this is. So there's lots to learn in this book, and I hope over the months and years that we're together, we'll learn all kinds of things from here. Because, but I want to review the strategy that Malvino has chosen, the learning strategy he's chosen, which is he decided to create an imaginary computer called SAP, the simplest possible computer, and then explain how it works in detail, in complete detail. So by the time you've gotten a handle on SAP, you really know how a computer works. And we talked some about this at one of our recent meetings. I'm going to review it for people who haven't been here before. And the only thing about PDFs is that the page numbering doesn't match the page numbering of book. So bear with me while I figure out how to get to page 140 here. So hold on just a second. Gesundheit. You'll see as I'm going by all these cool logic things and tables and electronic gadgets, extremely fun. These are the building blocks. I hope.
Adam?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
One way I do what you're doing is to reduce the percentage magnification of the view so it's down to showing a whole page at a time. And then as I scroll, I'm bopping by pages and I can spot the page numbers more readily.
Like so?
Keep going.
What is it?
Page 146.
It's page 146, but I could do a search for 146, right?
Well, Adam, I'm doubtful if it's a scanned image versus an OCR. But if you keep reducing until you see the entire page at a time, you'll save a lot of effort on your scrolling and consume a lot less brain power.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. This is not text. This is a bunch of images, so you can't really search it.
Got it.
Also, just another tip: you're in what's called the new interface.
Yes.
The old interface I find much more amenable.
Interesting. And how do you go back to the old one?
Okay. Well, first of all, you're still struggling with if you keep reducing until you get to see the whole page at a time.
That tells me what page I'm on.
Yeah, no, I think you can type into the 146.
Yeah, although I think 146 doesn't match the 140. That's what I'm worried about.
No, right, I have the same PDF on my.
And it is
computer,
146?
and 146 matches to 140.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we'll type in 146 here. Thank you both. So we're in the right neighborhood. So I just need to get in the right neighborhoods. Here I am.
So
can everyone see the page okay?
Maybe go in the other direction down there, 140.
That's
Yes,
okay.
I can see it.
Relax. I just want to make sure everyone can see the page. So, Martin,
Adam, to answer your question.
Yeah, how do you get to the old view?
At the top left, those three horizontal lines, that icon is affectionately called the hamburger.
Tofu burger.
Well, if you imagine rotating them so they become three dots, then it might be more evocative because often three dots means there's more functions over here.
Got it.
But the basic evocation is it's a menu. So click that.
I did.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, towards the bottom, if you click Disable New Acrobat Reader, you'll hop into the old interface, which I find much more amenable.
Okay, here we go. It's supposed to be restarting.
Maybe.
It's thinking. Something's happening. Something's happening. Thank you, Martin. I had no idea we could do this. I was so annoyed by the new stuff.
Oh yeah, and there's a way to get back, and somewhere in the old style menus, there's a way to go to the new Adobe, so you don't lose the ability.
So I don't know what it's, so here I am. Am I now in the old one?
Yes, because you see now it tells you the total number of pages, and at a glance you get a percentage view. And if you click the little triangle next to that 63%, no, higher up.
And why did they get rid of this, Mark?
Oh, don't. Why is? I tell my clients, how and what is easy. Why is very expensive to find out.
Now, where's this percentage you're talking about?
1 inch to the right of where your cursor is.
Right, I see.
83.6%. Nope.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
now
not,
1 inch.
that's not the zoom. That's where
That is the zoom. Yes. So click the little triangle and you get a preset menu of choices.
Oh,
For example, I use Fit Visible to see the whole page.
Okay. I think this is everyone able to see this clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna.
It looks like you're fit to the width of the page.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, let me just scoot ahead. So notice as we're driving, we see all this cool electronic stuff. This is really fun. If you want to spend some cold winter nights looking at how the different wires cause different lights to go on, it's really cool. So we're going to go on here. And this is showing how different wiring arrangements lead to different logical results, which is the underlying story. He gives us an example of a counter about how as you hit, you put a load on a wire, it causes the bits to increase. This will make a lot more sense in a moment when we talk about the innards of SAP1. So hold on a sec. He gives a couple of examples of these different gadgets, a ripple counter, how memory works, different kinds of memory. And he talks in the lowest level about how this works. And he talks about addresses, which we'll talk about shortly. So I really encourage people. I'm a little puzzled about this book and its availability, but I'm very happy to talk with people about it for people who want to learn more. All right, so we use the word architecture. You've probably even heard, if you're not a computer person, you've probably heard that about computer architecture, the modern computer architecture, IBM's computer architecture. It's just a fancy word for how computers put together. And this talks about the different parts. And this diagram that you see here, this is an extremely wonderful diagram. So I just want to share it with you for a moment so everyone can get a feel for how wonderful it is. This diagram, if you understand this diagram, you really understand what a computer is and how it works. Let's look at the different parts, and I'll just give you a quick tour. That line in the middle is really, really important. It's the road. It's called a bus. There's some confusion about wording there. Really, it should be called a road because that's really what it is. It's a road for electrical signals. We call it a bus. I don't know where that terminology came from. It somehow the electricity was being bussed in. I don't know. But what the bus is a bunch of wires, and you can only put one set of signals on the wire at a time. So one of the key things about a computer is it is a coordinated dance. A computer is a orchestrated dance. You can't use the bus for two things at once. And so you have to make sure that everyone cooperates and behaves. So let's look at some of these parts that talk to the bus. In the upper left, you'll see the program counter. This is a simple counting device that starts at 0 and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to whatever. And the program counter points to a location in memory. So essentially, it says, start here, then go to the next step, then go to the next step, and go to the next step, all the way up through memory. That's what the program counter is. It's the thing that allows the computer to step through operations. The accumulator, which you see on the right, is a simple box with 8 bits in it, 8 ones or zeros, that stores a number. And it turns out to be the most used memory bank in the computer. We use a couple of different words to describe these memory banks. One of them is a memory location, and another is a register. So we'll often refer to the accumulator as being the accumulator register. Now, on the left, you'll see input and memory address register. We'll call it the memory address register. This is a place where a memory location is stored, and we'll see in a little bit how that works. Below that is the memory itself. So remember, the beauty of a computer is you can store things in it. So this computer has this bank of registers that are the memory. And in this computer, it's a very small one by modern standards, but it's got 16 memory locations. Then below that, we have the instruction register, which is where the next instruction is going to go. We'll talk about that. And finally, we have in my opinion, the second most important part of this computer, and some would consider the most important, the controller, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Over on the right, you'll see a B register, an adder, which allows you to add A, B to the accumulator, an output register, very important, so you can see what the computer did. It's the thing that sends it out to a screen, says this is what we did. And the output register is connected to some kind of display. That's it. That's a computer. Modern, old, this is a digital computer. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to walk this computer through a computer program, so we understand how it works. Let me show you how that goes. What we're going to do is we're going to find a program. It's got a couple of these written, and we're going to walk through this program. Here's a nice program. So this program that you see in the upper left, example 10.1, and for people who are on Zoom where it's not magnified enough, if you go to your upper right-hand corner, you'll see a box called View Options. If you click on View Options, there's a view ratio you can choose, and you can go there and change the magnification of what you're seeing. If it gets big, you'll use a hand to move it, to move things around, so that you can make things a little bigger if this is too small, depending on your eyes. So here is the SAP1 program. This is our first BNUG computer program. So let's just talk about what this program does. The first instruction says LDA 9H. So LDA means load into the accumulator. Remember, I told you that box in the upper right, the accumulator, is so important. That's because it's where most numbers go. So this command is really important. It loads into the accumulator, but it does something very special. The number to the right is 9H. H is hexadecimal. It's a special way of expressing numbers. Won't worry about it for now. The 9 is what's important. The 9 is going to get put in the accumulator. No. That would make sense, right? You see the 9 and it gets put in the accumulator. That's not what LDA means. In the SAP1 computer, LDA means load the thing that's in the memory location pointed to by 9 into the accumulator. Now, this is a huge step in the development of the computer. It's not just putting numbers in memory locations or putting numbers into the accumulator. It's able to go to memory, pick a memory location, and put that number into the accumulator. And you'll see over time as we've learned this, how valuable that ability is. So LDA means take the thing that's in location 9, the 9th shelf of the computer, and put it in the accumulator.
Adam?
Yes, Martin?
Can I share with you a quick way I remember this from an old computer science class?
Please.
The professor pointed at a student in the audience and said, "Say your name." And the guy said, Bob Smith. And he pointed to the next guy and said, "Say your name." He said, Mary Jones. Pointed to the next guy and said, "Say your name." Your name. So there's a difference between the literal, the 9H mathematical value, and the indirect, or the interpreted. Follow 9H and go there and get the value there.
A fair point. And I think that there was a very famous comedy team, Burns and Allen, Gracie Allen and George Burns. And at the end of each show, does anyone remember what he says to her at the end of each show?
Oh, yeah. Say goodnight, Gracie.
And what does she say?
Good night, Gracie.
Exactly the same idea. Turns out she played dumb, but she was really, really smart. She was smarter than George Burns, I think, and he admitted that. The second one says add AH. So add means add to the accumulator. So what number are we adding to the accumulator? Say again. Well, we'll think about hex. We're adding a number to the accumulator. What is the number we're adding? I tricked you.
I imagine it's the value stored at location AH.
That is correct. Now, we actually have a little inside information here. If you look down to the next table, you'll see the data. You'll actually can see the memory locations. What's in AH?
2 hex.
0244.
Yeah, in AH is 02. And the H just means it's hexadecimal. That's the format of the number, which again, we're not going to worry about right now. So AH is the number 2, which means when we execute add AH, it's taking the number 2 and putting it in the accumulator. It's adding the number 2 to the accumulator. All right. So what's in 9H? Location 9H. Yeah, we don't say the H. You would just say 1, the number 1. So 1, our first step, instruction 1 was load what's in memory location 9. So Steve, what's now in the accumulator after the first instruction? Got it. Now add AH. What's in the accumulator now? This is for Steve.
So done in 9H?
Careful. We have 1 in the accumulator. You showed that in step 1. Hold on. Now it's going to add AH. It's going to add the memory, the thing that's in memory at A. Where is what is in memory location A? You'll have to look down to the table for that. Yes. So what are you adding to the accumulator?
2.
You got it. What do you have now in the accumulator? You got it. Very nice. Okay. Now BH. So the next instruction is add B. Stan? Oh, I'll make it bigger for you, Stan. Can you see it now? Is it? Hold on, we're doing some visual adaptation here. Stand by, folks. So the question, Stan, is we're now on step 2. We've done load 9H. We did add AH. Now we're going to add B. So the question is, what's in B? Wait, hold on. You can't see it. Yeah. What's in location B? Exactly. So what number are we going to add to the accumulator in this step? Yes. So what's in the accumulator now? Very nice. We had 1. Then we added, what was the second one? 2. So we've got 3. And then you're adding another 3. So we've got 6 in the accumulator. Very beautiful. Now, the next step says sub C. Jay, you want to go for that one?
Subtract the CH, which is 4.
Yeah.
So subtracting 4 from 6.
You do. And then you do out, which sends it out to the output, and the program's done. Good work. So this language that we're using is called a mnemonic language, meaning it's got some letters to help us know what the commands are. But the bad news about computers is that you can't use letters inside a computer. In the inner guts of the computer, you can only use numbers. So it turns out that there is a code that connects these names and numbers. I'm going to see if I can find that for you. So here's an example. Here's load FH. So the load command, just by someone decided it, it's not anything magical. The load command, LDA command, is equivalent to 0000. That's the load command. F is 1111, translated from hexadecimal. And the add command is 001. The halt command is 111. So each command has its own special binary code. And to wrap up the discussion today, I'm going to show you a picture that explains how these codes actually work inside the computer. And then there's lots more to learn here, and we'll be doing it each month. But let me go. What I'm going to show you is what's called the control matrix. For those of you who are science fiction fans, this is really something. See if I can find the control matrix. Bear with me. These are all the diagrams of how the bus works. Also extremely fun to study and learn about. Keep going. Hold on, please. What I want to give you a brief flavor before we wrap up this part of the discussion is I want to share with you the control matrix. I'm going to see if I can find it. This is the control matrix. Now we're going to use Martin's zooming lesson, and we're going to zoom out, because the only way you can see a control matrix is by really zooming out. Okay, zoomed out too much. Let's try 50%. So this gives you the bird's eye view of the control matrix.
Adam?
Yeah, should we go landscape?
I was going to say, you can rotate this view, and you can also tell to fit the width, or you can also type in your own number. You don't have to choose from the preset list.
Let me try to do a view here. What I'm thinking landscape will be easier to read. So let's go to the view menu. I love the old style, Martin. Thanks again for that.
Oh, no problem. I find the new one really irritating.
Yeah.
Yeah, rotate view. There you go.
Okay, so we're going to rotate clockwise. Click. Okay.
And then you can I would change it to fit the width. So go to the 50% spot. Click its little triangle.
Yeah, I'm going there. Hold on a sec. Yeah.
And then hit fit width at the bottom.
There we go. Nice job. Okay. So again, I encourage people to use the view ratio button at the top of your Zoom if you want to get a closer look at what I'm showing you. I'll also zoom in when we get to something, but I want to give you the bird's eye view as we conclude our discussion today. When I came across this, I was so intrigued by it. I want to see if I can share some of my enthusiasm. What this picture does is it explains really how a computer really works. So let me just try to lay it out for you. These 6 boxes you see at the top is a clock. And what it does is the clock has 6. It's like a clock with only 6 numbers on it. You know, we have a clock with 12 numbers. This clock only has 6, and then it starts over again. So there's T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6, T1, T2, T3, and it keeps on going and does that for the whole life of the computer. There are these steps that the computer goes through. And if you look at this drawing, what it's saying is that at T1, the T1 line is turned on. And if you follow the wires carefully, you'll find, can people see my cursor? Yeah. So here's T1. Yes. Here's T1. And if you follow the wires carefully, this is like a Where's Waldo thing. You follow the wire and you'll find that the effect of T1, when you go through all the positives and negatives, is it turns on this control wire here and turns off this wire here and leaves everything else alone. And the effect of this is that the output of these wires at the bottom is what is called a control word. And the control word controls those 6 boxes we looked at the beginning of the talk and says, just turn on the first box in the upper left and the next box below it, but turn everything off. That allows those 2 boxes to talk with each other. And what they do is, in the first step, the program counter gets put into the memory address register. That's what the first step is. Then in T2, only because if you follow all the wires, the only thing that happens is that EP gets turned on and everything else is off. That increments the program counter. That's step 2. Step 3 says, take what's in the memory address register and reach into memory and get what's in the memory location and put it in the instruction register. And then T4 says, now we have an instruction. On the left-hand side, you all see those things on the left, each with 4 wires on them. If you look at the top here, do you see these 4 inputs? If I put 0, 0, 0, 0, remember that 0, 0, 0 was LDA? If you follow those wires carefully, you'll find that LDA gets turned on when these 4 are 0. And we can talk in detail about exactly how that works. But what's beautiful about this is that your instruction 0, 0, 0, 0 triggers LDA, which turns on exactly the right steps for the first step of the loading accumulator. It actually says, go to the memory location, turn that on, and turn on the accumulator and allow them to talk to each other over the bus. If you instead, the instruction, remember there was another instruction, which is add. If the right combination, I think add was 0011 or something, I can't remember. But whatever the instruction is, if you look at the wires carefully, that will trigger this guy, which will turn on this add wire, which will turn on just the right control sequence to turn on the right boxes. And just to wrap up, I'm going to go back to that picture of the boxes so you understand what I mean. Bear with me. Yeah, here it is. Now we're sideways. I'm going to do the view again. Hold on, please.
Yeah, Adam, it doesn't rotate just the one page. It rotates all the pages.
Got it. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate view, and we're going to go counterclockwise. Okay. So here's our boxes. So you see that in that first step, PC and MAR are lit up because we chose the right control word with our clock counter. In the next step, only the PC is lit up because we're incrementing the program counter. And in the third step, the memory address register, which got the memory from the program counter, points to memory and tucks the memory into the instruction register, which then tells the controller to put out the next word. And then the next step is this execution cycle where, depending on what the execution is, in this case, it's the load routine. It's going to, in the first step, it figures out what instruction it is. The second step, it carries out the load, which is it goes to the memory, turns on memory for the proper location, and loads it into the accumulator. And the third step, it's a no-op. It does nothing. So I hope this gives you just a quick flavor of this wonderful world. We'll continue with it next time. Thank you for listening. And now to the main part of our discussion. So I want to share with you part of the reason why I recommended that we talk about this. As people know from our session a few sessions ago, I talked in detail about Shoshana Zuboff's book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, in which Professor Zuboff, who is a very distinguished professor emeritus from a famous local business school, talked about her view about what's going on here in our society with computers and what role computers are playing in the shaping of our society. I talked about that in some detail. We'll go back to some of that. But I found myself really intrigued and wondering, is what's going on here the same as what's going on in other places? And I found myself quickly gravitating to China because China's been in the news for having what's called a social control system. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the US system, but I'm going to begin with something completely different. I'm going to begin with Jared Diamond. For anyone who's read his most famous book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond is an anthropologist who talks about why the Western powers were so victorious over the other countries in recent world history. And his theory was, it was guns, it was germs, and it was the invention of steel and the use of steel. And there's much more to it, but that was the gist of it. I found him very interesting to read, but there's another book of his that is really germane to what we're talking about. It's called The World Before Yesterday. And it's a very heartwarming and heart-rending book. And to understand it, you have to go back a little bit and learn a bit about this man, Jared Diamond. Jared Diamond has a very unusual profession. He is an archaeologist of ancient birds. So this is a bird archaeologist, but only birds that were 1 million years ago. So he spends a lot of time looking at bird bones. And it turns out that there's really good bird bones in Papua New Guinea. So Papua New Guinea was where he went for his field work. for 30 years or something. Every year he would go, he lived in California, I think he'd go to Papua New Guinea and do his field work for 6 months. Now, this was a very fortunate thing for him because Papua New Guinea has a very unusual characteristic. When he went there to live half the year for 30 years, it was one of the only societies left in the world that had not yet been touched by Western civilization. It was essentially an isolated community where there was literally almost nothing from the West in Papua New Guinea. Everything was done, it was as representative of society of where we came from, the world before yesterday, as you could imagine. So he describes the society in detail and also how it changed in his lifetime, in his working time. Papua New Guinea became a Western place. It became Westernized. People moved into the cities. People started eating a lot of salt. People started getting diabetes. All the wonderful things that modern civilization brought. But this is the punchline that I want to share with you. One of the things I love about Jared Diamond is he's an honest man. He's not, a lot of people who write about traditional societies say, oh, they were wonderful. If only we hadn't slaughtered them, we would have learned from them and everything would have been better. I don't disagree with that, but it's the idealization of these cultures that is silly. Jared Diamond is quite clear-eyed about Papua New Guinea culture. They killed babies, they killed old people, they had no police power, so you could be going to the bathroom and people would hit you over the head. It was not a pleasant place in many, many ways. But he went on to say there were some things that they did much better than we do. And I want to share one particular example. He gives others, and my reference to diabetes is another example. There was no diabetes, no high blood pressure. People were working out too much for that stuff to happen, and the diet didn't permit it. But I want to talk about their justice system, because it will be a segue into talking about China and the United States, where the issue about justice, fairness, human rights becomes really, really central. He described a crime in Papua New Guinea. A man was driving a car in a busy marketplace, and he hit a kid and killed the kid. In the United States, this would be manslaughter. The man would be brought up on charges. He would also be sued in civil court for damages by the family, by insurance companies, by everyone else. And there would be this long, you all know this, a long drawn out process where this guy would be going to court, where there would be judgments, where there would be insurance arguments, there'd be all this stuff. And the victims, the family of the victim would suffer through hoping that justice would get done, or maybe they forgave this guy, who knows. In Papua New Guinea, there's actually a very different procedure, and I want to share it with you as a prelude to talking about this culture and Chinese culture. Here's what happened. The perpetrator took full responsibility for his crime, and with his extended family, walked to the village where the child lived and went to visit the family of the victim. There's a large table laid out where everyone sat, both families, both extended families joined together around this table. And the murderer took out a package of money, cash, and threw it on the table. And he turns to the extended family of the victim and said, "This is trash. This can't possibly even begin to compensate you for what I did to your child. I am so sorry." And for the next 2 weeks, these two families would live together, feast together, remember the dead together, talk about this person and the loss. And by the end of the 2 weeks, they'd got to know each other well. And the extended family of the perpetrator went home. And there was no revenge. There were no lawsuits. There was no seeking of justice. The goal here was social harmony. The goal here was to heal this horrible event that happened. And there's lots more to say about this, but I was very moved, and he was very moved by witnessing this. And he went on to describe, by contrast, suing a guy who screwed up the drywall in his apartment. So he had some contractor who like overcharged him for the drywall, and he had to bring him to court. And he described this long drawn out process among total strangers which is by law in the United States. You can't have anyone in a court proceeding who knows each other. It's forbidden. So he never actually talking with this drywall contractor. Like, it was just extremely nasty, impersonal process that left everyone feeling like shit. Yes, Sharif. Oh, Sharif, come to talk. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sharif Sheikh. I'm originally from Karachi, Pakistan, and I'm not a Pashtun by any chance, but in Afghanistan, the villages, I'm not talking about the city, and they have a tribal area, they settle things like that, like the way we had it in the Wild West, if you've seen some of the movies. So they call it a blood money. And that's how the jirga system, it's like a village council, you can call it, they decide. And it's very quick, like a Wild West decision, like a judgment. And usually it's the blood money. If you have some money, they agree to it. And there's no revenge. But if something didn't work out, or if it's intentionally, then it's a bigger problem. But if it's happened as an accident, they do forgive it. And that's called Pashtun Wali. They call that kind of law. And that goes pre-Islamic way. It's not Islamic thing though. Don't get me wrong, but that's how they have the culture built in. And that's how they follow.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharif. Thank you. That's a good prelude to realizing that these systems of justice, they vary from country to country. And so I want to open this conversation about China by saying that when I first started to explore this, it was the first research I found was people screaming about what's going on in China. And I want to say just at the outset, this is very complicated. So maybe that's the way to begin, is to say that Chinese culture and US culture are very, very different in some really important ways. But I was intrigued to find that people's reaction to the Chinese efforts was not well thought out. I think that's what I would say. I would say that the reactions in the US community, you'd say, was basically, these people are a bunch of Nazis who are controlling every movement. And the Chinese look at the United States and say, these people are a bunch of crazy animals who don't know how to control themselves. Now, both of these descriptions have some merit. So it's important to recognize that China is a country with very little political freedom. In the Freedom House measurement of political freedom, China has a negative number. It's extremely controlled country. In the United States, I think our number is 20 or something. It's a very, very different situation. But I want to look beyond this, or look more into this, to try to understand what's going on in China, what's happening, who's doing what, and share a bit of what I found, and also talk about how that contrasts, but also is similar to what goes on in the United States, and see if we can learn. I also hope this will be a discussion. I want to encourage people like Sharif, who knows something about this, and I know Perry got to visit China recently, but also I'd like to hear from other people about their own, either their ethnic experience or national experience. And Elaine is from Brazil. There are people from different countries here. And my own culture, I'm East European Jewish, and we have interesting justice issues as well. So let me begin by saying the basic facts of what's going on in China and their computer use. And this is from reading articles by people who really seem to know what they're doing and don't particularly seem to have a big axe to grind. They really are trying to share what's actually happening. So China has a system called social credit, and it has two components. I want to emphasize this. This is not clear to a lot of Americans, so I want to make it really clear. There are two major components to this system. So let's talk about the first one. The first one has nothing to do with individuals. It's a business social credit system. And remember that China, until fairly recently, was a communist state-controlled country where there was no individual enterprise at all. And China has made the transition under Deng Xiaoping in the 70s and 80s, a transition into a partial market economy with a lot of state influence. As part of that process, they needed to have a credit system. You can't have a market economy without a system for saying, I trust you, I'll give you some goods and you'll pay me sometime. You have to have a system like that. You have to have some kind of loaning system and a system of knowing who you can trust and who you can't. So the social credit system is a system to evaluate businesses. Now, this gets very interesting. We have systems like this in our country, and in China, they've modeled their system partly after ours. They basically have credit rating systems to measure a company's credit rating. But in what turns out to be a very characteristic Chinese way, they don't just measure the company's ability to pay their bills on time. They ask, does the company give to charity? I'm not kidding. Does the company give to charity? Does the company have good relations with the Communist Party? Does the company do volunteer work? Does the company have any outstanding court judgments? Very interesting. In the United States, that's not part of the credit rating system at all. In China, they actually ask the question, do you owe the government a whole bunch of money you're refusing to pay? And if so, it hurts your score, which I found really interesting. In general, the social credit system in China seems much broader and much more interesting than our system. And you think maybe not? Do you want to comment?
Boy, I haven't thought about it in a long time. When Bill Clinton was president, the Department of Labor wanted to set up a system for federal contractors that would evaluate whether or not they were in trouble with any laws involving state or federal, referred to as the blacklisting law, because you would be prevented from contracting with the federal government if your score was too high or too low, whatever it would have been. And they tried to reinstitute it, I think, when Obama was president, and it didn't go anywhere. A lot of pushback from businesses. So it's not, the idea of social scores is not unfamiliar here.
Although I'll note, Stan, that there was no question about it in China. Like here, businesses in the United States said, we're not going to do that. They prevented those laws from being passed. In China, the Chinese Communist Party, which controls the country, it's a dictatorship, embraces this approach. They really care about whether companies have paid their debts or whether they're in trouble with the law. I think there's a thing about pollution. There's an environmental component. There's components that many people in some parts of the political spectrum here would really value if we had these measurements. So I just want to note that. The second component of the social credit system is weirder. And it's the one that has really freaked out some Americans. And some scholars feel that the freak out is excessive. So the second part is a social score based on a person's behavior. And the way this is described in the most lurid accounts is everybody gets a score. You start out with 1,000. If you jaywalk, your score drops to 900. If you have nice friends who also have good scores, your score goes up. If you buy too much at the store, your score goes down. So it turns out this is not true. It is true that there was one particular city in China who went whole hog with an idea like this, and it flopped. The people didn't like it. The government didn't like it. The Communist Party didn't like it. So this claim that China is coming up with this uniform social code for each person, and they have a huge database where they're measuring everybody's behavior, and if you don't get the right score, you can't take a train, is a large exaggeration. And in my reading, there's a strong suggestion that the Communist Party does not want a system like this. Having said that, I want to add that the people who try to provide this balance don't leave out a really important fact. China doesn't need a system like this. They already have it. They don't need a database to track people's behavior. China is the most controlled, one of the most controlled countries in the world by people's own behavior. People in China behave themselves according to what they think the government wants. Now, this is very peculiar to the American ear because we're all a bunch of Wild West people out here. But in China, you remember that the major religions in China, Confucianism, to some extent Buddhism, the Confucianism in particular, the primary rule of Confucianism is obeying your parents, obeying authority. Confucianism is about status and about hierarchy. That's the way it works. It was invented, Confucianism was invented to bring order to a chaotic society. And so most Chinese people, by the accounts that I've read, like this. They really want a society where people are obeying the government. That this works for a lot of people. When people say, what's the matter with you? Don't you want more human rights? They look at us and they say, human rights, like the right of this person to sleep on a park bench, like the right of somebody to smash your Capitol building, all the other things that they see on the news from America, the right of people to shoot a bunch of people with a rifle. They point out that their obedience is actually a social good. And it is not true, from what I understand, that most Chinese people are just busting to get out and they want to have a country like ours. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. The large majority of people in China fundamentally support the government and the way the government works. And the government is definitely moving towards using more technology to do what it already does. But I just want to emphasize that what they're doing is incongruous with what people want them to do. I'll give an example. There's a very annoying group in China. They work for the government. They're called the Changhua, I think. And they're basically like those annoying people in your neighborhood who make sure that you didn't put your recyclables out the wrong night. Like they come and bug people and tell people you're not following the right rules. And apparently they're very annoying to Chinese people. They don't like these people, but they're part of the system. So China, some part of China incorporated this thing called the eye of the city. This is a technical, computerized system using AI that's able to detect unhappiness in the city. So if something is funny or different, the AI program flags it and tells the Changhua, go and check this out. So apparently some woman was putting her laundry in front of a store, and the AI system picked it up. The Changhua showed up and said, you have to move your laundry. And according to the account of this journalist, who was a Western journalist who had no special truck with China, she said, people like this. It resolved the problem. The laundry got moved out. There wasn't a conflict. It was like calling the cops and having them, and they were into this. This worked for them. So I think we should be aware that what the Chinese people want is actually AI and other technical innovations like the 200 million cameras that exist in China are doing something that a lot of people wanted to do. Now, of course, this is not the whole story. We need to add that human rights record that Human Rights Watch is claiming is an accurate description of the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party. There is significant imprisonment, torture, and murder of people in China for political reasons. We need to face this. This is a fact, and it's part of the story. So I'm going to now cut the scene to the United States. So here's a quiz question. There are 200 million cameras, public cameras in observational cameras, surveillance cameras in China. How many are in the United States? Jay says 5 times that number. Anyone else? Steve, what's your number? What number? Not live webcams. Webcams are to look at trains, Steve. These are to observe people.
When you say public, do you mean cameras that are observing the public or cameras run by public organizations like the government?
Government cameras. Yeah, government cameras. I don't know if it would include a security camera in an elevator. It's like the ones that are on public squares measuring with traffic. Yeah. Does anyone want to make another guess? We've got 200 million for China. Do you think we have a lot fewer? Steve says more. Other people on Zoom? Anyone have a guess?
I'll take 30 times China.
You're saying 30 times China?
Yeah, that's my guess.
Wow. So the answer is 50 million. So we have 50 million surveillance cameras in the United States.
Oh, so 1/4.
1/4. Yeah. So we also have another surveillance system in this country that is not run by the government. What is that system? Facebook, security systems,
Copy link.
other surveillance that people know about. Google, others. Phones, yes, which is owned, and who owns the phones? What are the two companies that create these phones? Apple and Google. You left out one big elephant. What's the largest computer company in the world? No? Microsoft, yeah. Although Apple by money, but Microsoft by employees, I think. All right. So all of these companies are engaged in daily looking at you and your stuff in a way that China can't even begin to compete with. We have a system in this country where huge amounts of energy and mind, effort, and money are going into monitoring everything you do.
Huh.
What is funding that? So Lane says ad revenue, Jay says taxpayers.
Free market capitalism.
How does this work? How does money get into the pockets of Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and Google?
Business people pay for it. I mean, it's how they track advertising. It used to be something called the SRDS. It said what was the demographic of the people who listened to the radio station. So that determined the rates of the radio station. So I think it's probably something very similar.
It is, although it's much, much more accurate. So one of the jokes about early radio advertising and TV advertising is nobody could really prove that it actually worked. But the innovation of modern advertising, Google advertising, Microsoft advertising, Facebook advertising, is there's a very accurate measurement of exactly what it does. When you pay for an ad on Google, you're able to be told exactly who saw the ad, who clicked on it, who went to your website, and you're able to follow that trail through. So I was shocked to discover how enormous this is, how much money is involved. It's astonishing.
It started with barcode and products. That's how Walmart mastered logistics and became the richest company.
So barcodes in supermarkets
Yes.
is like is beginning to track what you bought.
Yes.
And now you have that card. Anyone have a Stop and Shop card? So you go in and you get a discount if you use the Stop and Shop card. You know what they're doing. They're tracking your buying behavior and making a profile about you.
And there's those checkout list grocery stores where they just have cameras literally like watching you, and then when you grab an item, you put it in your cart. The whole thing is you don't need to go and check out because they're just watching you. They keep track of what you put in your cart and when you leave the store with, and that gets charged. It's like an Amazon grocery store.
That's does that Zoom people? Can you hear what Lane said?
Barely.
Lane, could you just come up and say that again?
I'm not sure how many of these are still around, but there were checkout list grocery stores or other like physical stores like this. I think the first one was done by Amazon, where instead of you taking all your groceries up to the cash register and either you scan them at a self-checkout or some cashier scans them for you, they just have cameras and other sensors watching everything, you included. And when you walk in, you actually you have your phone, you either scan something at the phone or they're just already tracking your phone and they're like, oh yeah, you're our customer. We already know you. We'll start checking your tab. And then as you grab items from the shelves and put them in your cart, they'll keep adding that to your virtual cart just through cameras. And then you just walk out of the store and they know exactly what's in your cart and they know exactly what to charge you for.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I like that. I think the imagery there is really interesting. You can see where this goes. If you're able to watch somebody at a grocery store and find out what they buy, why can't you watch them when they walk into their house? Why can't you watch them in a public park? Why can't you watch them when they go to the movies? Why can't you watch them 24/7 and figure out what they're going to do next and then figure out how to advertise to them? That's actually happening. It's not, well, so AI is part of this puzzle, but I think the thing to emphasize is and then I want to see if Perry could share with us a little bit about his experience in China, to give us some perspective. What I just want to note is the revulsion that people experienced when they heard about the social credit system in China and misunderstood it. But even the misunderstanding, the revulsion about it is from people who are putting up with what Lane's describing. And I don't think they understand. It's sort of like that really annoying person who's in your class who just really drives you crazy, actually acts kind of like you. Like this is one of those situations. Perry, could you share with us a little bit based on the conversation so far, if you want to add something about your experience of China and share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, just very briefly, that the kind of control that you describe is all present in my experience, but it doesn't feel invasive. It didn't to me. You know, I felt free to do whatever I wanted, including take whatever taxis I wanted to take, walk wherever I wanted to walk, stay in whatever hotels I wanted to stay in. So it felt quite free. As I stayed there longer, I began to see that there was I'll call it infrastructure that was beautiful to look at, but worrisome to think about why it was there. And what I mean is there were like the streets were incredibly well maintained, but there were iron fences all along between the car lanes and the sidewalk. And what you kind of realize is it's crowd control when it's needed. The only situation I came into that was very frustrating was I got a message from my credit card company that there was a problem with my credit card, and that kind of was what I was living on. You know, nobody used cash anywhere in Asia that I went, Japan, Taiwan, or China. They all used like cards with like the Apple Card, except the Apple Card didn't work. And Japan, it was the Suica card. In China, it was they called it the Ali card. I couldn't use it because I didn't have a Chinese bank account. But everybody uses that instead of cash. In any case, there's an international number for the credit card company. I tried it, I don't know, 100 times. And as soon as the number answered in the United States, the call was cut off. And there was nothing to do about it. There was nobody to complain to. There was nobody to fix it. It was just the Chinese firewall. So that's kind of my experience.
How did you deal with this? How did you work it out?
I waited till I got to back to Boston.
How did you pay for things without your credit card?
Oh, I continued to use the credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another credit card, and I had I think a debit card, and I think a debit card did work.
Thank you. I see some hands raised. Lisa, did you have a comment?
Thank you so much. No, I'm and I didn't catch the name of the person that was speaking just now.
This is Perry. This
Perry.
is Lisa.
Oh, yes, no, it's great to learn that overall the experience was okay. And I studied abroad in 2010. I studied abroad in China for a month, and it was the same thing for me. It didn't feel this it didn't feel intrusive in any way. And I understand that I was with a group of students and teachers, but I had the opportunity to go on my own, to go to different restaurants, to go to the mall. I'm trying to remember because it was back in 2010. I'm trying to remember how was the internet usage. And there was not much of that. But on the same hand, I wasn't using the internet much here either. But it didn't feel like it didn't feel different from like an European visiting a European country or any other international place. And that's and that was back in 2010. You know, I don't know if it's gotten even easier to navigate now.
Thank you. Drew?
Yes.
Yeah, my comment was just regarding, there was that gentleman that just talked about having his items scanned as he was shopping in the cart. We had a new plaza down the street.
Drew, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Lane. She's a she. She's
Okay.
she and hers. And yeah, she was talking about, cameras with shopping. Go ahead.
And a new plaza just opened up down the street from me. And a store put in a scanner that I'd never seen before. And I had 4 or 5 items that I brought to the counter. And the person just said, just place them on the counter. And I placed all of my items on the counter. Some of them were different shapes, a bag of chips, a roll of cookies, a container of soda, all different shapes and packaging. And the mere putting them on this counter, it was in some sort of a 365-degree scanning field of some sort. And it located and scanned accurately every single barcode on every product, no matter where it was on the package. And it correctly added everything up in the register and charged my credit card without having to individually scan each item one by one by one.
So
I'm sorry, Drew, I missed where you were located when this was happening.
In Sarasota, Florida, in a new gas station mart that just opened up down the street. It's a chain called Circle K, and they have this big contraption on the counter that I have tried to avoid, and the guy behind the counter said, "No, that's where you put your stuff." And it was like a bin, and you just put all your stuff in there, and it accurately scans everything that you put on the counter, and you just shove it in the bag and you're done. And no more individual item scanning.
So
Did the items have to like not be overlapping or adjacent?
I didn't do anything special. I just dumped them on the counter.
Okay.
So one of the questions I would ask just from that one particular example is there are several different layers to this, but one of them is what is the main way that someone without a college education gets some decent employment? One of the main ways. Working in retail, checking things out at the supermarket. It's actually a lots and lots and lots and lots of jobs. So one of the questions we might want to ask ourselves is when we make these decisions to fund a machine that does this and to make that an economical decision, we want to ask the question, what are the social pieces of this? So one of the things that I found from this discussion of these different cultures is the value of learning from these different cultures. So Jared Diamond is telling us our justice system makes no sense for it's wasteful, it's cruel, it doesn't actually lead to good consequences in many cases. We should do something different. And similarly, some of these other things that other cultures do, we should learn from. And one important step in doing that is to stop this, I don't know how to put it. I'll try to put it in a more positive way. Let's start being more admiring of the good things that are going on in other countries instead of this other thing we do. And so my take from hearing about China is they have something to teach us about social harmony, about people getting along. They also teach us some things not to do. The brutality and the cruelty is completely gross, and I want no part of it. But the part of it that actually sounds pretty nice is saying, yes, let's work together to get along well. And let's have systems in place that are supportive of individuals, supportive of a community. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I want to point out that in the United States, we're in big trouble in this respect. Very, very few of our institutions, certainly our privately held institutions, measure themselves based on criteria that are essential to have harmony. So if you'll notice, for example, in the United States, if you're a corporation and you take the environment into account, and you can't sell it as public relations, you will be fired, because our system says you're not allowed to take that into account. Everyone's familiar with this fact about American business, right? That in the American system, if you're a publicly held corporation and you do anything that hurts the bottom line, anything that takes money away from the bottom line, and you cannot justify it to your shareholders have the right to sue you and have you removed on the grounds that you were fiscally irresponsible. In a system which took these other measures into account, for example, Stan, if the law that you're talking about was actually passed, Stan, do you want to add something? Please. Yeah, come to the mic. So wait, get close to the mic.
You're making an assumption here, Adam, that being, socially sensitive in terms of your investing is going to lose you money. Why? Because it's not necessarily. It's one of those things I wrote a little note as thinking about that earlier in the conversation, because there are people out there who are trying to stop companies from using social criteria for their investment purposes. And it's not the Democrats. So, there's this push from a lot of people, a good segment of the population, in elected officials, to interfere in the way that private companies run their business. It isn't just stockholders. But yeah, the whole idea of stockholders is that they're supposed to maximize their return on investment. But there's no studies or anything that have shown that socially responsible investing loses you money.
Thank you.
Adam, can I add to that?
Martin wants to add, and then Steve. Yep, go ahead, Martin.
So back in the 90s, when I got interested in investing, my dad taught me a lot of the basics. What's a stock, what's a bond, and he kind of addressed, at least in a very general way, he wasn't trying to influence me, about socially responsible investing. And he pointed out that, there were a number of mutual funds at the time, probably still now, that have all kinds of criteria about what they invest in. I'm not talking about in an individual company, but about mutual funds where they, choose to invest in a lot of companies. And he pointed out there was, I forget the name of the mutual fund, but it was, he said, basically run by Mormons. They don't invest in alcohol, tobacco, firearms, or nuclear power, for moral reasons. And, at the time anyway, they were doing just fine in the stock market. Now, if one avoids investing in nuclear power, it doesn't mean you're going to go bankrupt. But most mutual fund managers have some kind of criteria, if not a goal. Are they looking to invest in small companies that are going to grow, in super reliable utilities who almost always have a dividend but may not have much growth? I mean, every investor or investment group has some kind of criteria or goal or method or charter or mission. And it's, if you're going to invest on your own, the marketplace, is what, over 3,000 mutual funds and who knows how many individual companies. It's everyone's presumed choice as to what and how they invest. So, I think more power to anybody who has the criteria that supposedly works. But, I've always also been taught that, if you're trying to time the market and you think you have a crystal ball, you're probably going to lose your money. So you have to be, careful about any delusional thinking or magical thinking you may have. So anyway, quick note on the investment front. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you very much. Steve, did you?
Also, I just want to mention, I put in the chat, I looked up what Drew mentioned about that checkout at the Circle K convenience store gas station. So I put in the chat what I just found on Google, if people want to read about the technology.
Oh, about how it works.
Well, at least the basic observation that it is present. But yeah, I propose a Google search where one can find out more.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, did you want to make a comment? No, please come up. Yeah. No, that's all right. What do you need us to do? All right, why don't you comment later then?
That's what Martin said.
Thank you. All right. So I think the comment I was making, which Stan, maybe you're presenting a really good different angle. The people who are choosing to invest can make their own decisions. That's a really good point, that one place where we could actually make our country better would be to influence investment and have investors say, we're not going to invest in your company because of the way you behave. And that has happened. The changes that happened in South Africa were largely caused by that effort to say, we're just not going to invest in companies that invest in South Africa. That was a real success. I think what I was saying was that the dominant ethos, but also the dominant legal ethos of companies, is that it's very difficult to say, I want to take social harmony into account in my company. There is some movement in that direction, but it's not a big movement. It's a small movement. And one of the questions that I think, because this is a computer group, I want to return to is the role that computers are playing in shaping what people do. So I want to really bring us back to this and emphasize this, that in China, the effort is now to use computers to do what the country's doing anyway. Like they're reinforcing what are already very dominant trends in this country, in that country. I'm wondering, in contrast, in our country, are computers reinforcing what we want? So that's the question I want to put to us as computer people. We are the people who are responsible for helping people understand these tools. Do we all think that basically computers are helping our country go in the direction it wants? I think China, in many ways, it is. I'm not sure. Some of the things they want are things that we don't want for our country. But let me ask the question about our country. You can often learn more by looking at yourself. Are computers helping us go in the direction that we want? And if not, what are they doing to us?
Well, Adam, I think that's such a broad question. I don't know how I could possibly answer it. I mean, my input would be based on a very unscientific partial memory of recent client sessions, plus the usual occasional crazy or war story. In my myopic experience, there are clients who are more comfortable with computers and clients who are less. And many of them feel it's an alien but unfortunately necessary device in their house or their office. those who anthropomorphize the computer say to me things like, "My computer hates me," or "It sits up and wags its tail whenever you show up, Martin." um, uh, so I think they understand that it's a tool, whether it's a tool they have to fight with all the time and feel like it's an alien presence or being spied upon or malevolent, or it's a vector for malevolence to get into their lives, or whether it's a tool that, neutral thing that they can use or not use, or whether it's a positive thing. I have a client who's extremely disabled, and the computer is one part of how she functions in the world and functions really well. So I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag. But I think there's also, perception versus reality. I think there's things that are hard for even you or I to discern. I mean, I remember wrestling with a computer that I eventually came to the conclusion it probably had some very deep malicious virus in it, because I installed some antivirus software on it, and then that software disappeared the next day. It was like there's a monster in the sewer, so to speak. So I don't know. I think, my semi-objective perspective is that, technology can be used in all different ways. The analogy I use with my clients is, take a screwdriver, right? One of a whole toolkit of woodworking tools can be used to, break into something, break a door open or something simple, can be used to stab someone to death. Should we ban screwdrivers?
Martin, I guess the question I'm asking is that I'm definitely coming from the position that we've talked about in other meetings, which is our society. People are shaping our society. It's not just computers are just sitting there to be used as we want. There are people who are intentionally shaping our society in an analogous way. I think this is what I'm contending in this discussion, that what they're doing in China, which is very overt social control, they're not being cute about it. They're being very clear about what they want and what they're doing. They're not hiding. In our country, I think our society is also being controlled and shaped. And I want to see if we can understand that and say, what if that shaping is positive? Just like the Chinese are saying, we like the camera on our city that warns the Changhua to come and help us, or create order. What in our society that computers are shaping is something we want to do more of? And what of it do we as computer people want to warn people about? Does that ring a bell for people?
I wonder what part population has to do with it. I mean, management of huge groups of people is not the same as managing a village. I mean, it might in some systemic way have the same model, but I mean, my experience of being in China was that I felt safe. Everywhere I went, I felt safe. And I liked it. I like that.
And is
I don't think that's true in Boston. Is there very little in Boston?
Is there very little crime in China?
My experience was I wasn't aware of any crime. I asked about crime. I mean, I got funny answers to all kinds of questions. When I was in Taiwan, I asked everyone I met, what do you think of China? And what do you think of China invading Taiwan? They said, we don't think about it at all. It's actually not even an interesting question. We're living our life. So, I don't have a clue about how to manage groups of people in a country as diverse as ours. But I think, what you're really asking about, it seems, is what is the value system of the people that do have the levers of power, and how do we have some input into that?
Do you think Jay wants that? Jay, could you?
Yes.
Could you come up? Oh,
Yeah. Adam, I believe you asked the question, who is paying for this surveillance technology? I don't think you answered it. You got the guesses from the group.
No, I just want to know the answer.
The answer, what was the question?
Who's paying for all this surveillance?
Oh, who's paying for it? So the question I asked was who's paying for it? This goes, I think, a little to what Perry just said, which is there's a group of people who are running our country. And it's not just our government. There's other groups of people who have dominant positions in our country. Shoshana Zuboff believes, and it is very plausible to me, that a very important power group in our country now are the people who run internet companies, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and that their choices and decisions are having a huge impact on us. And so if that's the case, let me ask the question, like I would ask a Chinese person, are you okay with this? Are you okay with the way Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and these other companies are running our country? Are you cool with it?
Let's think more about, and I don't know how this is kind of thing, but I'm realizing more and more nowadays that a lot of the products and stuff we get.
See, look in the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that we get here in the United States are produced and made in China, and some of the foreign, like European countries, like our computers. I think a lot more of that stuff is now being made overseas than it used to be, because the stuff is a lot cheaper. The labor is a lot cheaper there in the other European states as well as China, and they're all shipped over here through seas and eventually going onto the rails, because I've been seeing a lot more container cars on the rail systems lately. And I've noticed through statistics of those rail cars, those box cars, that a lot of that stuff is being like Walmart and some of the big name department stores in the United States. So it's all coming from overseas into the United States through those rail cars. So it's picked up a lot too.
Thank you. So that's one part of this puzzle is China's export of computer equipment is 142 billion, and their import is 4 billion. They're exporting vast amounts of computer equipment. So let me pose the question to everyone, to us in our last 10 minutes of pondering all this. Do we like the way our society is being shaped? Do we feel like the Chinese do? The Chinese are saying, some of Chinese people who seems like the majority although it's hard to say, because if you say otherwise, you can get in really big trouble. So we have to take this with a grain of salt, but it seems like a lot of Chinese people basically agree with the basic goals of their country and the people who are leading it. Do we feel that way here? Do we feel like the management of these large internet companies are doing for us what we want done? Do we think they're doing what we want done as citizens?
Well, I'm sorry. Are you asking about companies or asking about the government? Because
no, I'm asking about.
We don't have any direct thing.
I'm asking about Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Facebook.
Oh, I don't think those companies have any particular regard for what you or I want.
That wasn't my question. That wasn't my question, Martin. My question is, do you like what they're doing?
Oh, some days yes, some days no.
What do you like? What do you like, and what do you not?
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert, nor am I tuned into the news, so I can't say I'm up to date on what they're doing. I can only speak to what I experience or infer, and I tend to not follow stuff in the news. I find it exhausting. So I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I think there's a lot of great technology out there that I see people using. And on the same time, I see a lot of likely exploitation or maybe inadvertent fostering of hate speech and misinformation. I mean, I think it's a mixed bag.
Could you give me an example, a specific example, Martin, of what you don't like?
Well, I can't speak not all of this is first person, but or my own personal experience, but it's my understanding. It's my experience. For example, on YouTube, I look up a few videos about things that interest me, health or old comedy TV shows or whatever. And, down the right-hand side are all these suggestions of other videos I could watch. And, some of them are in line with the theme that I'm pursuing, and some seem a little random, and some may be in line with previous themes. But I gather from what I've occasionally heard, that their underlying mission is to keep you engaged on the site. Apparently there's, lots of crazy, if not hateful, content out there, and that gets a strong reaction, and the algorithm apparently rolls those around to some chunk of the population. And that's raised some ruckus, in the public sector. And I think it's a tricky mixed bag. If you have an algorithm, it's not necessarily as smart as you are about
Martin,
ethics.
could you say a word about the algorithm? Like you're saying that the purpose of the algorithm is to keep people glued to the site?
Well, that's my indirect understanding. I obviously have no involvement in the authorship of the algorithm, but that would make perfect sense to me. Just like Amazon, you're looking at, foot massagers, and it may show you back massagers, or, nutritional things. So, every site.
This is very well established now, that the understanding of the way these algorithms work and what these companies say they're doing, what they tell their stockholders, is our job is to get people to stay on Facebook. Our job is to get people to put their files on OneDrive. Our job is to get people to be watching YouTube all the time.
Right, but I mean,
hold on.
The same is true of grocery stores.
Hold on a second. Yes, grocery stores are an interesting analogy here, but I just want to add, what in actual statistical experience, I just want to ask everyone if they know the answer to this question. Which is more effective in keeping people's attention? Bald lies about things or truthful statement?
I don't know. I think it depends on the audience. I've got a friend who follows Fox News like it's the Bible.
Well,
like it's the gospel.
What I'm saying is that when they've done studies of the propagation of how things going viral, falsehoods go viral much faster and in much greater volume. And going viral is all about these algorithms. That's what causes virality. So
I'm not at all surprised. I mean, controversial, incendiary claims are often much better than, little boy, rescued from well,
Well, wait a minute. Yeah, this is an old American story about, don't put good news in a newspaper or the newspaper will go out of business.
Yeah.
It's an old story, but wait a minute. The story's not the same anymore. It used to be a decision that an editor in a newspaper would make. And it's true, if you looked at most newspapers, they're pretty lurid. And it has had an effect. We've gotten into wars because of newspaper editors. So it's not like this is a new problem. But the point that I want to make is that this problem is much larger, and it's also hidden. In the case of a newspaper, at least you could see Pulitzer, making these claims in his newspaper, and you say, oh, that's Pulitzer. But there's now a much more complicated process going on where people are getting dished up this stuff according to a hidden algorithm that has these effects of apparently of exaggerating things, exaggerating social effects in a way that's what Shoshana Zuboff uses the word repeatedly in her book, unprecedented.
Well, and also what's unprecedented is in microseconds, it flashes around the world.
Yes.
A newspaper might take weeks, to propagate.
Yes. And so the question that I'm asking is, are we okay with this? I'm not asking this in the abstract, like, do we think this is nice? We are computer professionals, and part of our job is to help people work with computers. If computers are doing something that's dangerous or not in the social best interest, it's part of our job, in my opinion, certainly this kind of group's job, to notice that and address it. We can't address it if we don't talk about it. So I'm talking about it. I'm raising this issue and I'm asking the question, do we think the social computer systems that we have in this country and the ones that are being built in the near future, are we okay with that? Martin's giving a mixed bag. Maybe some other people could weigh in. Salom, do you want to comment? Salome, are you there? I think you got muted. Your phone got muted. Let me see if I can unmute that for you. Salome, you'll have to unmute. I think you have to type a code into your phone.
Hi, Adam. Can you hear
Hey there.
me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. I mean, all the points we're talking about is so complicated. It's up the chain. Who makes these decisions? Who approves this? Everything that comes to the market. Who is deciding that this can be done, this cannot be done? I think it's such a complex issue that no one answer can really solve what we are talking about.
So
That's
let me ask this question, Salome, as a fellow parent, as a parent of children, like I am, do you feel that our computer systems have done well by your children, that they've been a good influence on your kids?
Oh yeah, basically yes. I mean, there are goods and bads, and I think the goods outnumber the bads in terms of kids learning about computers and problem solving. I think there are downsides, but I think in all, I think it's a good product in a way.
Do you think, I know Megan's a police person now, right?
Yes.
Megan works for the police. Do you think that computers have made policemen's work better, worse, the same?
It makes the work easy for them, and they have to force them to use the good part of the computers, which is just like, for example, wearing a camera when they go on a call. So our computers really improve a lot of our lives, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you think that I'm thinking about police in particular, because we opened this conversation about China and having cameras. Would you be in favor of having more surveillance, like more cameras in our public areas to reduce crime?
It's a very tricky issue. I mean, having more cameras everywhere, it's not going to be the answer. We have a system where we never have any cameras anywhere, and the crime and the conditions have not been too bad. So just adding more computers just to say to control everybody I don't think is the answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you be in favor of having a satellite system that took photographs of Boston and could detect a crime going on to alert the people that a crime is going on?
No, I don't think it's that necessary, because it's going to lead to a lot of stuff, racial profiling, which who makes those calls for. It's such a complex issue that, like I said, we've been around for years and years without cameras. So cameras is not going to solve all our problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Martin's example of the screwdriver is really the most germane thing that I can think of about computers. I mean, is there a way to increase the sophistication of, like you're doing now? You're having this talk with all of us, and I imagine your reason that you're doing it is your commitment to awareness of your fellow Earth livers or something like that. But I mean, the thing about computers is, and what you were just saying is, I think it's only going to increase. Our surveillance is only going to increase. And the mechanism that we put in, I can't think of a way to call it other than adjudication, but ultimately I think it's modeling. What do we model is the right way to do it.
How we use our screwdrivers.
Yes.
Showing good ways to use our screwdrivers. So
absolutely.
In wrapping up, I would like to invite people to think about this month, to ask ourselves, what are we teaching about screwdrivers? How are we teaching our customers, our society that we live in, about using these tools? What are the lessons that we're imparting about what's working and what isn't working? What are good uses of screwdrivers and what are bad uses of screwdrivers? I like the Lane's introducing us to this shopping thing and opening some really interesting questions, which is, do we like this? Do we really want a camera that's able to look at what we're shopping for? And what would happen if somebody who is hostile to us got control of that camera? I think this is a question Frank Church asked in 1975 when he investigated our internal and external FBI and CIA activity. And he said, look, these have become very powerful agencies and we're actually pretty good. He didn't say that completely, but he said, we're relatively not a tyranny. But if a tyrant got control of these tools, we would be in deep shit. That's what he said. And so one of the questions we should be asking is not just, are things going well now, but what would happen if these tools were used in a different way, but the same tools? What if people got a hold of the screwdriver and started doing really bad things with it? What do we have in place to make that less awful? And so I want to encourage people to be thinking about these things in the months ahead and thinking about how we can play a positive role as we think about these issues.
Yeah, I love that you brought it up. Thank you.
Thanks so much for everyone for coming.
Yeah, can I add to it? Don't commend you for what you do in terms of computers, going into the prisons, going to these uncharted territories to go and teach computers to people who doesn't know nothing about computers. It's remarkable. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Salam. I appreciate that. I think in general, all of our efforts, I know a lot of people here and a lot of us have a real commitment to education of many different kinds. And so I want to encourage us to realize how important that is. I just want to end by saying that there was a big teacher strike in Newton, which for people who aren't from this part of town, Newton is a suburb of Boston. And there was a illegal but very long suffering group of teachers went on strike because they had real trouble negotiating. And what they were negotiating for was, I thought, quite honorable. It wasn't actually for their own salaries, it was for the salaries of social workers who were getting underpaid. But what really struck me, somebody wrote a simple paragraph. She said, I want to ask yourself about the doctors you know, about the plumbers you know, about the actors you know. And she started listing all these professions and all these people who are so important to us. And she said, every single one of these people got to where they were because of a teacher or several teachers. That's what really made the difference for them. And so I want to remind us, this is an educational group, and I want to remind us of our deep responsibility and importance in helping people learn about these really important social issues. And
Adam, can I add to this up to your teachers for striking in Newton? So I work around Newton a lot. So you go there in the morning, they have this long truck with all their plaques all over it. They're blasting this music. We're not gonna take it. No, we're not gonna take it. I mean, driving up and down the street all day. It's so beautiful to see.
Thank you, Salam. Steve is pointing out that our next meeting is March 5th. We'll be back here at this beautiful library in Mass Bay. Just a quick moment. I'm just going to do a quick camera survey if I can. This is the beautiful library in Mass Bay. It's gorgeous. And we invite people to come and join us next time in person. If it's great to be back in person, thank you all in person. We have our largest group here since COVID. We're growing, and we really invite you all to join us, but also please join us on Zoom next month. And have a wonderful month, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, folks. Take good care.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Thanks very much, everybody.
March 5th at 7:30 p.m. Thank you, Tony. We'll see you again soon.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Thanks again.